China's military aggression in the Indo-Pacific has reached levels that should concern anyone paying attention to global security. In 2024 alone, Chinese forces conducted over 3,600 flights into Taiwan's air defense identification zone. That's an average of more than 10 violations per day, every day. And based on numbers from early 2025, it's only getting worse. By some counts, China has scaled up to over 12 violations of the ADIZ per day in January and February 2025. But it's not just about numbers. China's grey zone tactics have intensified as well, with multiple undersea cables connecting Taiwan to the outside world being mysteriously cut since 2023. China Coast Guard vessels now routinely operate inside Taiwan's territorial waters, conducting what Beijing euphemistically calls law enforcement operations. The message from Beijing is that Taiwan's time is running out, and that's why Taiwan is planning something big, a practical reinvention of its military and a clear strategy to hold its ground in the event of an invasion, to the tune of approximately $40 billion. So let's talk about what that $40 billion is actually buying. In November 2025, Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te announced that Taiwan will achieve a high level of combat preparedness by 2027, backed by a staggering $40 billion special defense budget, though the amount is unconfirmed, and a commitment to raise defense spending to 5% of GDP by 2030. That's more than double the current spending level. This isn't just throwing money at the problem. This transformation centers on what military strategists call the porcupine strategy, making Taiwan so painful to swallow that China won't even attempt it. This supplementary defense budget will reportedly be spent over 8 years, from 2026 to 2033, focusing on 3 critical areas: missiles, drones, and artificial intelligence systems. But the real game changer is how Taiwan plans to integrate these capabilities with greater US cooperation and a revolutionary new air defense system. Now, one of the centerpieces of Taiwan's new strategy is the T-Dome, which is a multi-layered air defense network that sounds like something out of science fiction, but is very much real. The system was first introduced during the country's National Day speech in October 2025, and it integrates advanced sensors, AI-enabled decision-making, and interception capabilities designed to detect and neutralize threats at extraordinary speeds. Why is speed so critical? According to Su Zhu-yun, Director of Defense Strategy and Resources at Taiwan's National Defense and Security Research Institute, the answer is simply the lack of time Taiwan has to respond to a first strike attack. Given the minuscule distance between the Chinese mainland and the island, with the Taiwan Strait being only 80 miles wide, traditional ground-launched ballistic missiles from mainland China would give Taiwan not even 10 minutes of warning time. That's practically negligible time to react, scramble fighters, alert civilians, and activate defenses. But China has evolved. New sea-based missiles launched from Chinese warships can reach Taiwan in as little as 3 minutes. That's barely enough time to sound an alarm, let alone mount an effective defense. China's Navy, which is now the world's largest at over 750 warships, a number that includes auxiliary and support vessels, has also been prioritizing modern multi-role vessels like destroyers, cruisers, carriers, and amphibious assault ships, specifically designed for this scenario. The PLA Navy also operates 3 operational aircraft carriers, with a 4th under construction. The T-Dome addresses this by creating an integrated network that can track, prioritize, and engage multiple threats simultaneously using artificial intelligence. In theory, the combination of sensors detecting threats, AI processing the data faster than any human could, and weapon systems automatically engaging targets within seconds would make this a worthwhile investment. Additionally, strengthening the T-Dome not only enhances Taiwan's interception capabilities, but also raises the risk for the PLA, making Beijing less likely to launch a military adventure in the first place. It's deterrence through demonstrated capability. And while Taiwan is developing impressive indigenous weapon systems, American military equipment forms the backbone of the island's conventional defense capabilities. The first of these is the F-16V Block 70 fighters, which are Taiwan's most significant Air Force modernization. Unlike older F-16s, the V variant features an active electronically scanned array, ISA radar, the APG-83. This radar can track multiple targets simultaneously while remaining extremely difficult to detect itself. Taiwan is receiving 66 brand new F-16Vs, with deliveries expected to be complete by 2026. Additionally, 141 older F-16AB models are being upgraded to the V standard, creating a formidable defensive fighter force of 207 aircraft. Most importantly, the APG-83 radar provides capabilities approaching 5th-generation fighters, but at 4th-generation prices. Plus, the F-16 requires far less training than a more modern platform. With Taiwan's limited airspace, these F-16Vs can launch hit-and-run attacks using long-range missiles before retreating to hardened shelters. These fighters are likely going to form the offensive backbone of the Taiwan forces, while the helicopters will be on the defensive. Namely, the AH-64E Apache here provides close air support with Hellfire missiles and chain gun armament. The E variant's longbow radar can detect and classify targets beyond visual range, which is particularly valuable in Taiwan's often cloudy weather. These helicopters are a critical addition because Taiwan's Air Force, while modernizing, can't really match China's numerical advantage. Attack helicopters can hide in valleys and urban areas, then pop up to engage targets before disappearing again. To prevent China from striking Taiwan from afar, Taiwan is relying on 9 Patriot missile batteries strategically positioned to defend major population centers and military installations. The PAC-3 variant emphasizes hit-to-kill technology, essentially ramming incoming missiles rather than exploding near them with shrapnel. This kinetic kill approach is particularly effective against ballistic missile warheads that might otherwise survive proximity explosions. The entire PAC-3 project is valued at nearly $10 billion and should be complete by 2027, with hundreds of PAC-3 compatible missiles being delivered yearly by the United States. The Patriot system will likely be supported by Taiwan's National Advanced Surface-to-Air Missile System, or NASAMS, which combines advanced radar technology and high-precision missiles to engage targets ranging from aircraft to cruise missiles. But it's also demonstrated effectiveness against smaller targets like drones, which will undoubtedly be a major component of any future conflict. The system's ability to integrate different types of radars and launch platforms makes it particularly well suited for defense environments that need to rapidly adapt. Due to Taiwan's relatively small land area, at just 13,976 square miles, it only takes a few NASAMS batteries to create protective bubbles around the largest population centers. The United States approved the sale of 3 batteries to Taiwan in October 2024, with the first battery expected to arrive in 2025. Another system, the HIMARS, or High Mobility Artillery Rocket System, adds precision deep strike capability with fire-and-forget mobility. Each truck-mounted launcher can fire 6 guided rockets to ranges exceeding 50 miles, then immediately relocate before Chinese counter-battery fire arrives. When armed with ATACMS tactical ballistic missiles, this range extends to nearly 200 miles, which is enough to reach across the Taiwan Strait and strike staging areas on mainland China. Taiwan is also procuring hundreds of Harpoon anti-ship missiles in both air-launched and ground-launched variants with a range of 100 miles, over 400 Javelin man-portable anti-tank weapons, and 1,400 tube-launch, optically tracked, wire-guided TOW missiles. Shoulder-fired Stinger anti-aircraft missiles capable of taking out helicopters in a single shot, forcing China to rely on mid- and long-range strategies. P-3C patrol aircraft providing surveillance far from Taiwan's coast, potentially detecting China's submarine fleet of approximately 50 vessels. Oliver Hazard Perry-class frigates transferred from the US Navy surplus but upgraded with modern sensors and weapons. All of this hardware is important, but it's not the full story. The real revolution in Taiwan's thinking comes from embracing asymmetric warfare. The concept is simple. Taiwan covers its territory with thousands of relatively cheap yet lethal defensive weapons that make every mile of conquered land prohibitively expensive. So why this strategy? Well, for one, Taiwan has no hopes of matching China weapon for weapon and ship for ship. Instead, it needs to value quality over quantity, even if military culture and public sentiment would prefer advanced fighters and large warships. This is evident by comparing just some of the numbers. China's People's Liberation Army boasts over 2 million active personnel compared to Taiwan's 170,000. The PLA Navy operates 750 vessels. Taiwan has fewer than 100 ships and no carriers. China fields over 3,300 combat aircraft, while Taiwan maintains roughly 760 of them. In any symmetrical conflict, Taiwan would face swift defeat, so Taiwan turned to the lessons learned in Ukraine and the conflicts in the Middle East. Military observers watched cheap Iranian drones terrorize billion-dollar air defense systems. They witnessed Ukrainian soldiers using portable missiles to destroy Russian armor. They saw how mobile, distributed defenses could frustrate and even repel overwhelming attacking forces. The strategy hinges on exploiting the inherent inequalities in the economics of war. Consider this simplified calculation. A Chinese Type 055 destroyer cost approximately $1 billion to build. Taiwan's truck-mounted Husiong-Feng anti-ship missiles cost roughly $2 million each. If Taiwan needs to launch 3 missiles to sink one destroyer, Taiwan trades $6 million for $1 billion in Chinese losses, which is a 167-to-1 exchange ratio. Even if Taiwan needs 6 missiles per destroyer, it's still a 27-to-1 advantage. This calculation extends across all domains. Land-based anti-air missiles costing hundreds of thousands can down fighter jets worth tens of millions. Portable anti-tank weapons worth thousands can destroy tanks costing millions. Smart sea mines priced in tens of thousands can sink amphibious assault ships worth hundreds of millions. The strategy deliberately inverts traditional military thinking. Instead of seeking battlefield dominance, Taiwan aims for maximum enemy attrition. It makes China rethink just how expensive the hypothetical war would be, especially given how its economy is faring, which we'll touch on a bit later. But Taiwan also hasn't been sitting idle when it comes to developing its own weapon systems. In fact, Taiwan has been so prolific at creating missiles that its quality is a serious contender for world class. Perhaps the most important of these is the Husiong-Feng, or Brave Wind missile family. In particular, the Husiong-Feng 3 is a supersonic anti-ship missile capable of Mach 3 speeds that can strike targets up to 160 miles away. What makes this weapon particularly formidable is that it cruises close to the surface of the water, just a few meters above the waves, making it practically invisible to conventional radars, which are typically pointed at the sky looking for aircraft and ballistic missiles. Then, in the final approach, it shoots upward to gather momentum and kinetic energy before dropping down onto the target. This pop-up maneuver minimizes the potential response time for point defense systems. The newest variant, the Husiong-Sheng Land Attack Cruise Missile, extends the range to over 400 miles. That's far enough to strike deep into mainland China, including major military installations and command centers. Taiwan also maintains strategic ambiguity about targeting policies, never explicitly threatening to strike Chinese cities. But their existence and Taiwan's insistence on creating and showcasing new missiles should be reason enough for China to think about the implications. If China launches a conventional attack on Taiwan, the island could potentially retaliate with strikes on Beijing. Then there's the passive defense system that might be the most cost-effective weapon in Taiwan's arsenal: sea mines. Mines are incredibly inexpensive compared to the ships they can destroy. A single mine costing tens of thousands of dollars can obliterate a transport ship worth tens or hundreds of millions. That same ship could be carrying hundreds of Chinese infantry, who represent one of China's major numerical advantages in any theoretical invasion. The geography of the Taiwan Strait makes it particularly conducive to mine warfare. With a rocky seabed and shifting currents, Taiwan can deploy mines that would be extremely difficult for China to detect and remove. And while Chinese mine-clearing operations are underway, Taiwan's defensive systems could pelt the mine removal vessels with missiles and artillery. However, mines come with one significant disadvantage: they can't discriminate between friendly and hostile ships. Taiwan can only realistically deploy sea mines when a Chinese invasion becomes imminent. Otherwise, The minefields would block merchant ships from reaching Taiwanese ports, which constitute a large portion of the country's economy. The alternative is partially laying mines while leaving channels open for trade. That would be equally problematic, since Chinese flagships using Taiwanese ports could forward the locations of safe passages to the PLA. Taiwan currently has only 4 mine layers, and expecting another 10 within the next several years, likely later than China's rumoured 2027 invasion timeline. The country needs to defend at least 5 major ports and several minor ones, with mine layers, warships, and possibly even commandeered civilian ships laying mines, while under direct threat from Chinese long-range strike capabilities and the advancing navy. This is why Taiwan's long-range missiles are so critical. They provide enough leverage to preclude an attack in the first place, or at least delay it long enough for Taiwan to establish more effective defenses and wait for international assistance, likely led by the United States, Japan, Australia, and potentially India. And if there's one lesson from the war in Ukraine that Taiwan has taken to heart, it's the critical importance of drones in modern warfare. In 2023, Taiwan launched the National Drone Team, which includes drones in 5 different categories, ranging from mini drones under 5 pounds to large reconnaissance aircraft with cruising ranges exceeding 100 miles. The production goals at that point were set to be around 15,000 small drones per month by 2028. The country has also announced that it would work on procuring 50,000 foreign drones between 2025 and 2027. But that initial target falls short of Ukraine's current production, which is estimated at around 200,000 drones per month. And China's military is both numerically and technologically superior to Russia's forces in Ukraine. This reality check means Taiwan must rely on a diverse mix of capabilities rather than any single weapon system, which circles back to the core principle of the porcupine strategy. So, why all this urgency? Why is Taiwan racing to achieve combat readiness by 2027? The answer lies in a series of intelligence assessments and public statements that paint an increasingly alarming picture. In 2021, then Indo-PACOM commander Admiral Phil Davidson first raised concerns during a congressional hearing, warning that China might attempt to take Taiwan by 2027. The intelligence community dubbed this the Davidson window. CIA Director William Burns later clarified the assessment, revealing that Chinese President Xi Jinping has ordered the People's Liberation Army to be ready by 2027 to conduct a successful invasion of Taiwan. Burns emphasized this doesn't mean that Xi has decided to invade in 2027, but rather that 2027 represents the deadline for the PLA to develop the capability to successfully conduct such an operation. The year 2027 carries enormous symbolic importance for China. It marks the 100th anniversary of the People's Liberation Army's founding, which would be a natural milestone for Xi to demonstrate the PLA's transformation into what China calls a modern military. For Xi, personally, 2027 represents the 21st Party Congress, when he will likely secure his unprecedented 4th term as a leader of the party, military, and government. There would be practically no better way to consolidate power than by achieving the reunification with Taiwan that's eluded Chinese leaders since 1949. The timing also coincides with Taiwan's political calendar. The year 2027 ends just as Taiwan's next presidential election season enters its final stretch before polling in January 2028. Chinese military pressure could be designed to influence that election or create conditions for action regardless of the outcome. More recently, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth stated in May 2025 at the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore, Beijing is credibly preparing to potentially use military force to alter the balance of power in the Indo-Pacific. We know. It's public that Xi has ordered his military to be capable of invading Taiwan by 2027. The PLA is building the military needed to do it. Taiwan's President Lai clearly takes this threat seriously. His commitment to achieving a high level of combat preparedness by 2027 is a direct response to these intelligence assessments. But there's another possibility that keeps defense planners awake at night. China might move even sooner. Some analysts have suggested that 2026 could present a window of opportunity for China if Beijing believes Taiwan's defenses remain incomplete and before the bulk of American weapons deliveries arrive. The race is literally against the clock. And Taiwan's ambitious defense plans face a significant obstacle: domestic politics. President Lai's Democratic Progressive Party doesn't have a majority in Taiwan's single-chamber legislature. The main opposition party, the Kuomintang (KMT), has expressed strong concerns about the proposed defense spending increases. KMT chair Chung Li-won cautioned that high military spending could strain Taiwan's finances and also essentially trigger an endless arms race with China. The KMT historically favored engagement with Beijing and supports acceptance of the 1992 consensus. This is a proposed framework that allows both sides to claim that there is one China while interpreting the meaning differently. According to Professor Ding Shu Fan of National Chengchi University, Lai made a calculated political move by publicly announcing the defense budget before going through the formal parliamentary submission process. In effect, Lai has already made his position clear to the US. And as far as how the opposition may try to block the plan in the legislature, the ruling party can, in theory, suggest the responsibility is not on them. This strategy allows Lai to demonstrate Taiwan's commitment to self-defense to Washington, while potentially deflecting blame to the opposition if the full budget doesn't pass. The timing is politically significant for another reason. Taiwan is currently negotiating with the United States to lower 20% tariff on many exports, and discussing a deal that could commit Taiwan to investing more in US semiconductor capacity and sending personnel to train American workers. While President Lai insisted that the $40 billion defense boost is a long-planned effort to deter Chinese aggression and is not linked to Taiwan-US trade talks, the timing suggests otherwise. Taiwan is sending a clear message to Washington: we're serious about self-defense and we deserve American support in return. This brings us to perhaps the most critical unknown in the entire Taiwan equation. What will the United States actually do if China invades? US policy toward Taiwan has traditionally been characterized by strategic ambiguity, not explicitly committing to Taiwan's defense while also not ruling it out. This ambiguity is designed to deter Chinese aggression while also preventing Taiwan from unilaterally declaring independence. But during the 2024 presidential campaign, President Donald Trump avoided answering questions about defending Taiwan directly, stating only that he would be required to negotiate and find a diplomatic solution. More recently, Trump's administration pulled back from Russia-Ukraine peace talks after repeatedly suggesting he could end that war peacefully within days. This has raised questions in Taipei about whether the Trump administration would directly support Taiwan in a crisis. The situation is further complicated by Trump's America First economic policies. Taiwan is one of the world's largest exporters of semiconductors and related products, with a large portion going to the United States. If the US successfully builds up domestic semiconductor manufacturing, it could theoretically reduce its strategic dependence on Taiwan. However, most analysts believe the US would intervene in a Taiwan crisis for several critical reasons. First, Taiwan's semiconductor industry isn't easily replaceable. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC, produces the world's most advanced chips, and building equivalent capacity in the United States would take a decade or more. Second, allowing China to seize Taiwan would fundamentally alter the balance of power in the Indo-Pacific. Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, and other US allies would question America's commitment to their security. The entire US alliance network in Asia could unravel. Third, China controlling Taiwan would breach the first island chain, the string of islands from Japan through Taiwan to the Philippines that currently constrains Chinese naval forces to the east and South China Seas. A Chinese Taiwan would give the PLA Navy direct access to the Pacific Ocean, threatening US military bases and commercial shipping routes. The US State Department's response to Taiwan's defense budget announcement was telling. A spokesperson said that, "We support Taiwan's acquisition of critical defense capabilities commensurate with the threat it faces." Notably, Trump had previously proposed that Taiwan allocate over 10% of its GDP to military spending, more than any other country in the world bar Ukraine, and double NATO's renewed commitment. But even 5% is an excellent start. And there's another factor that might prevent a Chinese invasion: economics. China faces a critical vulnerability that Taiwan and its allies could exploit: the Malacca Strait. Right now, 90% of China's maritime trade flows through this single choke point between Malaysia and Indonesia, including roughly 80% of China's oil imports from the Middle East. If China invades Taiwan, the United States and its allies could blockade the Malacca Strait within hours. China's trade, which accounts for 37% of its GDP, would effectively vanish overnight. China would be forced to rely almost entirely on overland routes from Russia for oil, gas, and other critical resources. But Russia already accounts for 20% of China's oil imports. Increasing that to meet all of China's energy needs would require a massive expansion of pipeline infrastructure that doesn't currently exist. So let's bring this all together. Can Taiwan's porcupine strategy actually deter or defeat a Chinese invasion? The answer is maybe. Taiwan's transformation from attempting symmetrical defense to embracing asymmetric warfare is strategically sound. The economic exchange ratios favor the defender dramatically. Mobile distributed defenses are extremely difficult for even the most powerful militaries to overcome, as Russia has discovered in Ukraine. But Taiwan is still facing a lot of challenges. Taiwan's drone production, while improving, still lags far behind what modern warfare requires. Achieving full combat readiness by 2027 means every procurement delay, every political obstacle, every technical setback brings Taiwan closer to being caught unprepared. The parliamentary opposition could also block or delay portions of the defense budget, undermining the entire strategy. Most critically, the porcupine strategy depends on time. Taiwan needs weeks to mobilize reserves, disperse forces, lay minefields, and prepare defenses. If China achieves strategic surprise, or Taiwan's political leadership hesitates to order mobilization, the entire strategy could collapse. In the end, deterrence is about creating doubt in your adversary's mind. Taiwan is betting that by bristling with enough defensive quills, it can make China think twice. The next 2 years will reveal whether that bet pays off. Thanks for watching. Now, if you want to stay up to date with the newest developments in warfare and global geopolitics, subscribe to The Military Show for daily videos.